Hey, hockey fans, T-Boz is 13-3 here with another top-shelf guest, Michigan Tech Husky, longtime professional player and current Associate VP of Canadian Tire, Geoff Sarjeant. This episode is sponsored by Kelly Heating and Electric, Computer Recovery Associates, Dooley's Pub, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Mogi.
Hey, Geoff, thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, it's great for having me. Thanks. I think you guys have been doing a great job and listened to a few of your podcasts with some of the people I know, and it sounds like it's going to be a fun time.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. You know, we started out with a story on the pronunciation of your first name. You want to reiterate that for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. My given name is Jeffrey, but it's spelled Geoff, so a little bit of a Scottish or an English kind of way to spell it. And, growing up till I was 5 or 6 years old, it was Geoff. But I had a good buddy who lived on the same street as me, ended up being the best man in my wedding and played some hockey with him. He was also named Jeff. So we kind of got confused. We were Jeff and Jeff, right? So the story goes, I showed up to kindergarten or grade 1, and they asked my name, and I said it was Geoff. And so Geoff kind of stuck as a nickname, through most of my younger years and in through university. My wife still calls me Geoff to this day. But lots of in business now, it's Jeff for the most part. It was just kind of tough when nobody can get my name right. It was Geoff or Josh or, all these different things. So Jeff seemed to be easier.
All right, let's go with Jeff.
All right, cool story.
All right. Raised and born in Ontario, Canada. Did it take much for you to get involved in the great sport of hockey?
Yeah, not really. I think, both my parents were big hockey fans. My dad didn't play, but he had some good friends. He grew up in Orillia, Ontario, where I was born. Rick Lee is probably the one name, maybe some familiarity. He's a longtime coach in the league, but he hung out a lot with his brother. They used to go and visit and watch Rick play in the Ontario League, and I see the Bobby Orr jersey behind you. They used to tell me lots of stories about watching Bobby Orr when he played in the Ontario League. So anyway, both my parents loved hockey. They weren't hockey players, but it was the thing to do, right? You put your kid in hockey and get them out of your hair on Saturday mornings.
So who was your favorite team and player growing up?
Definitely the Leafs. I'm not a diehard Leaf fan, but it certainly had some effect on me when I was young. But Mike Palmateer was really the guy that got me excited about hockey. And I can still remember my dad taking me my first Leafs game. And in the old Maple Leaf Gardens, we sat, I bet you we were 2 or 3 rows right from the top. We could kind of reach back and touch the top ball. So it was a long way away. But anyway, Palmateer was a really acrobatic goalie, and he did some things that were a bit off the wall. But I can certainly remember the time that night. I guess, the other team had iced the puck or something, right? Just kind of get some relief and get a change or whatever. And then instead of Palmy kind of just catching it or whatever, he skated out of his net. And probably about the hash marks, top of the circle, he jumped up and he drop kicked the puck right back to the other end. And I'm like, that's the guy I want to be. I want to be that guy. So I wore number 29 whenever I could. I didn't get to wear it all the time, but that was my number, kind of in honor of Palmateer.
Nice.
And was that what led you to the position of goaltender then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing was, my best buddy his dad was our coach when I first started playing hockey. And it was one of those kind of leagues where there wasn't really a goalie. Everybody just took a turn. They put the pads on and took a turn. So I guess when I was in, I played pretty well. But when I wasn't in, I was just standing in front of the other team's net. So either I was the smartest forward or I just wanted to be close to be the goalie, right? So it ended up being goalie.
Fair enough.
Awesome. So who had the greatest influence on you in your hockey career?
No, there's lots. And I try to think of this one. There's just so many. I don't think there's one single person, right? And so you got lots of coaches over the times, whether minor league coaches or, NHL coaches, my college coach, goalie coaches, there's just lots of influence there. And then there's players, whether the people like I talked about, like Mike Palmatier and getting to meet him, or Eddie Belfour, or Tretiak that I worked with a little bit, along the way. Even seeing other players like Ed Belfour, I loved his style. So I think those were my influencers, as well as my parents too, right? Like they just kind of encouraged me and wanted me to have fun and gave me a great work ethic. So I think it's a bit of everything. Like that's you put it all together and kind of whatever it spits out is what you got.
Every goaltender that we've talked to has a regiment before a game, superstitions, something that they follow. How about you? Same way?
Yeah, you know what? I've been told that I'm more of a normal goalie, if that's the thing.
No, it's not.
It's an oxymoron, right?
It is. But maybe I'm more normal. So if you get in the scale of weird, I guess I'm lower on that scale. But I certainly wasn't freaked out about stuff. I like to get dressed a certain way, and had my routines, but they were more to prepare me mentally than it was, I just had these superstitions. So yeah, left foot before right foot, and that was about it.
All right. So do you think as a goaltender that mental preparation is different for you compared to, say, a defenseman or forward?
It is. It is. I think there's less reactionary time. I would say, like, you don't have time to kind of get into the game. You got to be ready for the game. I think there's more scenarios you have to play out in your head. When you're a goalie, you're kind of looking at everything coming to you, right? And so you can kind of envision all that stuff coming. And it's really, it took me a long time to learn how to prep in that way. I would say even I was still learning. By the time I retired, I was still learning. But I still, I used to spend, an hour and a half before games, going through every scenario in my head. It's a 2-on-1. The guy who's carrying the puck's left-handed. The other guy's right-handed. Where's the puck going to go? Where do I have to go in my net? Right? And sometimes the guys would score on me when I'm thinking of this. So I have to repeat it again so I can stop it. Right? So, but it's just a skill that it's hard to develop. And I would say even to the point where I went to, I'm not sure what their real title was, but they taught me some mental skills. So I learned how to control my body temperature. So I could actually raise or lower my body temperature by a couple of degrees just by kind of using your mind to think of icebergs or think of walking over hot coals. And it was just that kind of mentality and training that helped you in that mental game, right? And so I've coached a lot. I've coached hockey and ringette with my daughter. And it's trying to teach kids that. Oh boy, it's tough to kind of get through, but it really makes a difference in the preparation. So I think coming back to it, a goalie really had to do a lot more of that than a player or a D.
Okay.
Well, you have to be a pretty decent goalie, if not excellent goalie, to get recognized by a D1 hockey team. And at some point, Michigan Tech came calling. What was the skill set you brought to the game that Michigan Tech liked in you?
That's a good question. We should probably ask Darcy Way or Bruce Horsch, who were the guys there at the time. But I think most are, are you competitive? Can you skate? And I think for that was one of my big assets. I could skate for a goalie. I could move around the net. I'm pretty quick. I think those skills kind of came to the forefront for sure. It was an interesting time. I got some good stories kind of on the way of that recruitment piece because, I guess I was okay when I was a kid. I didn't think I was great. I got drafted in the Ontario League by London, and I went down to camp there, and I was just so over my head. It was not funny, and so I said, at the time, I'm going to leave after 48 hours because I want to go to college. But I'm I wasn't ready for that kind of challenge, right? And so, over those years, you get a few teams coming down. I can still remember Red Berenson, who was coach in Michigan, came to watch me. and I think we lost 11-10. So that was the last game he watched me, I guess. But even for Tech, like Bruce Horsch was the assistant coach at the time. He had come to watch me in junior, but he really came to watch Curtis Joseph. And so you guys know the career Curtis Joseph had. Well, my team kind of beat his team out in the playoffs, so I think they were leaning towards me instead of him. And that's, I always tell Horsey, that was one of his worst recruiting mistakes. But really the break I got was there was a goalie at Tech, and I can't think of his name now, but he left late in the summer to go back to the Western Hockey League, and there was an opening. And so I think, I just kind of was the one who answered the call first, I guess, to come and play. But yeah, I think that's some good ones on how you kind of get there. It's just opportunistic sometimes, right?
So you mentioned the London Knights in the OHL. So had you continued playing with them, that would have negated your ability to play goalie in the States then for a U.S. college.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the rules at the time, and they're a little bit changed now, but not much. But yeah, you kind of have a 48-hour window to kind of decide if this is right for you or not.
Boy, that's not a lot of time.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time. But you know in a hurry if you're ready for it.
Bet you do. All right. Give us an idea. We've talked about Darcy Way, obviously a former Tech goalie himself and a former guest here on T-Boz, and he talks about his recruiting up at Michigan Tech, where he got a paper plate full of eggs and some bacon, and McGinnis patted him on the head and said, "Welcome." What was the recruiting trip like for you?
It never happened. It never happened. I was scheduled to come a couple of times, and it's a hard place to get to, especially by plane. So you got to fly to Detroit, and then you got to take a little, a prop job kind of in the spring, I think, is when I was really kind of trying to visit. It's foggy in that little in the valley there, so I tried a couple times, never got there. So I kind of went unsight unseen.
Wow.
Did any other programs want to take a look at you, or did you make any other visits?
I had a couple of different pieces. The intent for me, it was probably a year earlier than I had planned to go to school. So I had planned to play another year junior out in Saskatchewan, and then thinking that I would start the visits then. So this one, like I said before, this opportunity came up, and wasn't about to pass it by. But yeah, it was a little bit premature for where I was ready for it, but it worked out well.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
You were in the old WCHA at that time, which I feel was probably at the time the best league to be in when you were a college hockey player, and there's some significant battles that would happen. What team did you have to get most prepared for to go to battle?
Yeah, we had some tough years the years I was there, so maybe every team was hard to prepare for. But I knew I was going to get a lot of rubber no matter what team I spent. But Northern Michigan probably was our biggest rival. Even though we finished fairly close to the bottom of the pack in most years, if we won the series against Northern, it was a season win, right? So that was the ones that we really kind of got up for. Winter Carnival, as you know, I don't know if you've ever been able to take in Winter Carnival at Michigan Tech, but it's fantastic. And that really elevated us. Somehow we became a better team on that weekend, and I really had some good success. But I do remember a couple of different places. Like we had North Dakota was always a tough place to go in there. They subsidized their student population to get them in the building, so it was a tough crowd to play against. Oh. We had a player on our team named Darcy Martini, big 6'4" defenseman, and just really hairy and kind of stood out. Somebody had thrown a hot dog at him, and he, kind of on a face-off or whatever, he bent over and ate the hot dog right from the ice. So they were fans of his after that. It was amazing. But a couple of the old buildings, like even Minnesota, that old rink, where I think it was kind of built into the basketball arena. And so on one end, like as a goalie, you could reach your stick up and touch that roof. But it had an amazing feeling. You just felt like they were all over us most of the time, but it really felt that that building helped them kind of zoom in on them. And then I think the last memory I have is maybe, I think it was either my junior or senior year, we played Wisconsin, and I think Wisconsin might have won the national championship that one year, but the first round we played them, and it's such a great, that Dane County Coliseum at the time was an amazing place to play. I remember the band with their trombones was right over the glass, but they were out shooting us after the second period. I think it was something like 48-12, and it was a 2-2 tie. And so their crowd was starting to cheer for me. And so every save I made, they were kind of chanting. We ended up losing, I think 4-2, and I had 65 shots or something like that. But that's one that stuck into my mind, and I said, wow, that was it would have been a really fun game if we would have been able to pull it out and big upset. But that was a couple of memories from some great ranks in the old WCHA.
Well, it's nice to know the Wisconsin folks appreciated a good effort when they saw one, even if it wasn't their guy. That's
Fair
okay.
enough.
So after you had finished up your career at Tech, you played 4 seasons with the Peoria Rivermen in the International Hockey League, and then you got your first action in the NHL. Tell us about that first game, getting call-up and playing in your first NHL game.
Yeah, I played, lots of exhibition games with the Blues, and was called up on a few occasions to back up when there was an injury. So I was pretty familiar with the guys. My awe had kind of worn off after playing so many exhibition games of, you always thought you were on TV the first couple times and just had the best seat in the house, right? When you see the people who were right in front of you. But so, when I finally did get an opportunity, I think the first game was against Vancouver. And this is the Mike Keenan era. So, of course, it was a result of him pulling a goalie that I got to play, which was great. And so made it through the third period fairly unscathed. I let one goal in. Pavel Bure scored on me on a breakaway. I actually think I saved it, but he skates so fast that I was trying to back up to match his speed, and I had it on my pad, and I just went right in the net with the puck. But that was but I played well enough to get the start the next night, and I played Anaheim that next night. They were an expansion team at the time, but I got my first win that next night and had an assist as well. So I had a big one. It started a nice little run for me on there. It was funny too because one of the defensemen, Al McInnes, is a Hall of Famer. He played a lot of minutes at that time, and he really liked when I played because I like to handle the puck. And so he would be begging Keenan to get me in there and asking, can Sarge play? Because I'm a little bit tired. And so, because what he would do is when I was in net, he wouldn't have to come back to get the puck. I would stop it, and he would stop along the boards or the hash marks, and I just kind of get it out to him, and really saved a lot of wear and tear on him. So it was always nice to have a guy in that corner.
You were his new best friend on the team.
Exactly.
Well, what a game though. Second time out, you get a win and an assist. And what was it like? You hear all the different stories of Mike Keenan, mostly bad. But are there any good things, or what was it like playing for that guy?
No, there's lots of good things, and he's, when you break it down and you see it, and I'll tell one story that kind of demonstrates what his power was. But he was, a mental manipulator, I would say, and he knew how to kind of push some buttons and try to get the most out of you. And some of his tactics didn't last long because some guys couldn't take it, I would say. But it certainly was his power. And I can distinctly remember one game being called up, and we're playing the Hawks. And the Blues versus Hawks was the big rivalry, dating back to the old Norris division. And then I think the Hawks were really struggling that year. I think they'd lost a bunch of games in a row. And we were in Chicago. No, actually, I think we were back in St. Louis. And I think the first period they came out, and we had a pretty tough team. Like, we had Kelly Chase and Tony Twist, Basil McRae, like on and on. Like we had a tough team, and they were all over us. They were taking advantage of Hully and Craig Janney at the time, and running kind of our talented players. And I think they came out with a lead after the first, and so kind of in the dressing room, we kind of knew something was going to happen. Like Keenan was either going to blow up or, throw a stick in the garbage or throw it to somebody. But, we knew something was going to happen. And he comes in and he kind of was quiet and he made his way over, and Tony Twist and Kelly Chase sat beside each other in the room. And he kind of snuggled his way in between their stalls and sat down. And, just pause for a few seconds and let everybody what's going on here? Like, he's not blowing his top. And he said, it looks like we don't care about each other out there. And then he got up and walked out. And that's all he had to say. And so as soon as he walked out, Twist and Chase. So Twister was kind of re-sewing his jersey so it would rip off when someone grabbed it. Chaser was kind of walking up and down. Basil McRae's getting everybody going, because they knew it was directed at those guys, at who it was directed at. And so it was mayhem to start the second period. And there was no Blackhawk who did not feel the wrath of that Mike Keenan speech or sentence that day. So it's just an example of how powerful he was with that mental game and how he knew how to push buttons, right? So, and then even on the goalie pull side, I got a lot of opportunity because he liked to pull goalies. So, without him doing that, I don't know if do I get a shot or not. Who knows? But I can still remember on that run I had, winning my first game. I think the next game we played in Winnipeg, and I can remember I had a skate issue in warm up, and it was really hard ice in Winnipeg. So I was kind of scrambly or whatever and trying to get my skate sharpened. So I have to get undressed, get redressed again. And I was a little bit shaky at the start of the game. And I kind of had let I don't know if it was a softie in, but maybe it was a softie. And then I actually got my stick caught in the net, and I hooked somebody, and I got a penalty. And then that was the year Timo Solani got 76 goals, and he got one of them on me on the power play. And so that was the end of my night. But I was pissed. So I knew that I have to kind of stay on this run, or I'm going to get sent down, right? So on the plane afterwards, I was kind of sulking, right? I was grumpy and had the mean face on or whatever, because I know that was my opportunity, and I'm pissed off that had happened. And then so Keenan walks on the plane and sees my scowl on my face, and he said, "Sarge, are you mad?" I said, "Yeah, I'm freaking pissed." He goes, "Well, just let you know that you're not the first goal I pulled, and you won't be the last, so get over it."
Oh, nice.
But anyways, yeah, sure enough, I got sent down the next day.
Oh, there's a kick in the groin.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, that's the beauty. So you talk about influences, you learn that mental game, right? And you learn what coaches kind of bring. And I think Keenan was an amazing coach in that way. And so, yeah, I don't think it's all bad. There's certainly some things that were beneficial for sure. And it gave me the opportunity to play in the NHL. So how can I fault a guy? Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. He did give you that chance. We're going to take a quick second here and give a shout out to our sponsors. Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine has been committed to the healthcare needs of patients in western Wisconsin since 1954. The orthopedic surgeons and athletic trainers serve many area schools in the Chippewa Valley, and Computer Recovery Associates specializes in removing, monetizing, and recycling computer hardware from large data centers. Whether you're looking to relocate, repurpose, sell, or recycle, Computer Recovery Associates can help you. Check them out at computerrecoveryassociates.com. Mo?
So, Geoff, you had played for a couple of the teams in the old International Hockey League. What was your favorite stop and why?
Yeah, we had a couple of nice ones when I was there. And I would say the southern destinations were probably the most fun. So I think San Diego, probably my favorite. It usually involves some off days. It certainly involves sun because San Diego is 70 and sunny almost every day of the year. And it also usually involved a little bit of team building. And so you can kind of figure out what that means. But yeah, it was one of the more enjoyable stops. I mean, most of the guys love Vegas as well as a stop. I didn't like Vegas because I knew I was going to get a ton of shots, and because everybody else was sneaking back out after curfew to go to the casino, I knew I was going to get 60 shots the next night. So I usually stayed in bed most of the time in Vegas, so I didn't get to appreciate that as much as San Diego, that's for sure.
So they talk about the Vegas flu now in the NHL, and they talked about it a lot. Vegas's first couple of years. Do you think it's still a thing, or are guys kind of adapting to it now?
I think it's still a kind of a thing. Now, the hockey player has changed a lot over the years, and they are much more dedicated to their bodies, I would say, and kind of to their mental game. So I don't think there's as much Vegas flu that goes on, but I'm sure there's still a little bit.
Bet there is.
Understandable.
I want to go back, turn the clock back a little bit. You mentioned some significant NHLers that you got to play with, some Hall of Famers, Hall, McGinnis. Looking back, the different teammates that you had, which one stands out in your mind as the most prolific player that you played with?
Yeah, it's a great question. To me, Al McInnes probably is the one I would point to. I just had a ton of respect for him too. Loved playing with him, and he liked me behind him. But he just had a command of the room as well. Like, he was well respected. He was tough. He had this shot that cleared people away because they were afraid to get a hit. I think Al McInnes is probably one of them. But it's funny. People are in different ways. I even compare goal scorers. Like Brett Hull, pure goal scorer, right? And you could see his competitive nature even in practice. So I would really bear down on him. Like, I would try my hardest. And after he makes a couple of saves, or you make a couple of saves on him, like, he starts to get more competitive. It's like, okay, Sarge can't be stopping me like this, so I got to try a little bit harder. But it makes you better. And I always felt, for me, especially in a backup goalie role, like, I'm there to help them be better as well, right? So if I can try on every shot and challenge those guys in practice, it's just going to make them better too, right? So not that Hall needed me to make him better, but anyway, so it's just kind of different. And then you get a guy like Shanahan, who he was a different bird on the way he trained and way he practiced. Like, he knew that, yeah, if I come into the hash marks, I can score on you, but I never get that chance in the game. So I'm going to shoot for where I think I'm going to get that chance in the game. So he'd come on a one-on-one drill and shoot from the top of the circles, or just as he's crossing the blue line. And so you can see, why he was doing that. It made a lot of sense. But, he would take the time and effort to kind of train that stuff and work on those skills. So you can see why those guys who are elite level players are what they are. But those are a couple of examples of guys I probably played with.
Speaking of McGinnis, it must be nice having him on your team so you didn't have to face that cannon, huh?
Yeah.
Although you saw some pucks in practice, I'm sure.
He took it easy on everybody, but he actually could pick corners. So that was helpful. Like, we had a couple of guys, and sometimes you guys had hardest shot as McInnes, but they couldn't pick a corner, and you get in the shin or you get in the arm, and we're like, oh, please pick a corner. Like, I'm leaving this all for you open. Like, just get a corner. But anyway, yeah. No, McGinnis was he took it easy on us in practice.
Okay, going with that same question, who was the one that when you were in net, the last guy you'd want to see coming down on you on a breakaway?
Yeah, I think it would be Mario Lemieux. For me, being a little guy, like, I'm 5'9". He had like an 8-foot reach, like, from one side to the other. Like, there's no stopping that. And with some deception on it. So yeah, that would have been a nightmare for me. Now, I never had to play against him. But yeah, that one I dreamt about it, and And I those things when I talked about mentally trying to stop, I never could stop him in my dreams.
Everybody dreams about falling out of the window. You got Mario.
Exactly.
That'd be a nightmare.
Exactly.
So, Geoff, let's talk a little bit about your 98-99 season, okay? So I'm going to refresh your memory a little bit here. You played 5 games for 5 teams. You played 3 games for the Flint Generals, 14 with the Cincinnati Cyclones, 89 with the Detroit Vipers, 1 game with the Long Beach Ice Dogs, and 23 games with the Indianapolis Ice. Whew, take us through that year.
I don't think that
remember
year
all that.
I was like, I just blocked that year. I learned a lot about myself that year, I can tell you. And we had a really good team in Cincinnati at the time. And we couldn't kind of get over the edge. And so, they traded away myself and our captain at the time to kind of mix things up. It was the first time I got traded. And I really, you kind of reflect, and I don't know, I felt sorry for myself. I'm like, I'm blaming the situation on other people. And I think it took me a while to kind of get over it. And I went to Detroit and really couldn't fit in with their system. And I still kind of, feeling sorry for myself, I guess. I got sent down to Flint. Didn't do that great there either, except for I can remember, working on breakout passes. I think is the only thing I improved there. But and then I filled in a couple of games for some of these other teams. I was going trying to find a home, right? And then I think I got over the hump of kind of feeling sorry for myself and said, I better get this on track, or this is kind of the end of my career. And so I got traded to Indianapolis in a good situation. It was a young team. I could really play a leadership role in the team. There's a couple of older guys, but not many with me, Brian Noonan being one of them. And they just needed a guy to kind of hold the fort together for them. And so I came in and played amazing there. I think we had to win our last 9 or 10 games to get in the playoffs, and we did. So we won them out. We played Cincinnati, and in the first round of playoffs, the team that traded me, and we beat them out, and they were a favorite team. So that was kind of retribution for me.
Nice.
But it was, it really formed some of my skill set I still have. And so you talk about change management, and it's a big business skill. It's that I reflect on that time on you have to get over yourself. You always have to, be excited for a change because it brings motivation and it makes you better, makes you prove yourself again, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was probably a little bit maybe thinking I didn't have to prove myself, lost some of that kind of drive to be better. And so, yeah, as much of a nightmare as it was, it really formed a lot of who I am today. And so everything happens for a reason, right? And so I look back on that time with frustration, but at the same time, man, it was a good kick in the butt for me.
Nice.
With all the teams, both in the NHL and IHL, what was your favorite stop?
Yeah, the NHL is such a business. You play and you travel, and then you play and you travel. You don't get much time to see the sights, and you hear the kind of people talk about the grind of the NHL. It's a grind. Like there's not a lot of time to kind of, you're in the rink and then you're on a plane, and you're in the rink and on a plane. So there's not much time. So the IHL, you had a lot more time to do things, and to see things and spend time with your family and do that. So, it was great to be in the minors and seeing some of these stops. The Middle America is, it's some interesting places. Let me say that. The Fort Waynes and Peorias and Kalamazoo, Michigan, all those places, really interesting kind of stops in the Midwest. And then you kind of get some of these southern states. So we were playing in Atlanta and Phoenix and Vegas and San Francisco. So I love my time kind of visiting the the California places. Like that was, really a place I hadn't been to in my life. So kind of visiting San Fran and down on Fisherman's Wharf and over to Alcatraz and seeing some of that stuff, you get to do it in the minors and some off days. So yeah, I like kind of California for sure.
Yeah, that's understandable. So after that, you moved on to Europe. You played a couple years over there after the 1998-99 season. So what are some of the differences and similarities between playing the game in the States versus playing over in Europe?
Well, you don't get traded 5 times, I can tell you that.
Especially in one season.
It was funny time. Both, my wife was kind of tired of all those moves, and we had a bit of a young family at the time, and I was, just looking for a different experience. So we had a friend, actually a Michigan Tech roommate of mine, Jamie Steer. We were co-captains our senior year at Tech. He had been playing over in Scotland in the British Super League for 3 or 4 years. And his wife and my wife are real good friends. We were in each other's weddings. And so he said, "You know what, Sarge, come over here. We're looking for a guy. It's actually pretty decent hockey. It's a really fun place to play." And so I tried it. We went over and spent the year in Scotland and had a pretty good year. I got injured. I kind of hurt my groin, so I missed a chunk. But, it was a real fun time. Loved living in Scotland. My wife loved living there. It was a really great place to be, and got to play some of the great old courses, golf courses. And you know what, the talent level was surprisingly good. There are lots of North Americans over there with kind of English heritage. They didn't have 5 minutes for fighting. It was 4 minutes. So no major penalties for fighting. So there's some rough and tumble themes, especially in kind of meat and potatoes towns like Sheffield, which is a steel town in England. So they always had a tough team for sure. But yeah, it was good. A really good experience in Scotland. I moved to the DEL in Germany the next year in Essen, and it was a real different experience there. Talent level is amazing. Crowds were fun. They were more soccer-like crowds, forming kind of 2 or 3 hours before the game and getting their drinks in and having some chants and really enjoying the game. But Essen was in a major city. It was just right by Dusseldorf. So we lived in an apartment, which we'd never lived in an apartment. Always had kind of a house and a backyard. So kind of had an apartment, beautiful apartment, but we were 5 stories up, no elevator. Yeah, just different way, different mentality. And so we, and then we, bit of a tragedy that year. Our coach, who was my coach in Scotland and got me to go over to Germany, he died of cancer kind of suddenly that year. And our team wasn't the same after that. Like we just couldn't find our way after that. And so we ended up being last in the league. And then when you're driving around town with the team name on your car, that's not always great when you're last in the league. So you take a little heat. But then we had a little bit of a traumatic experience at our apartment as well. Like I was on a road trip and there was a fire, in an apartment above us, and a lady and her mom lived together, and I guess her mom had fallen and burned herself on a stove, but the lady was freaking out, and we were the first apartment underneath, and so not knowing any English, she was yelling and screaming at my wife and my kids to say it's fire, you got to get out. And so they were really traumatized by that event. That the lady actually died in that experience. So they left and went home after that because my kids were really had trouble getting over it. So anyway, that year was a bit of a grind on us. And then I was to the point where I think I had turned 30 then, and still had lots of game in me if I wanted it, but kind of had a bit of a choice, right? And so 30 years old, do I keep playing? If I keep playing, then I'm probably going to have to keep coaching after that and start over and do that and kind of have the life of the hockey. So my wife said, we're done moving. And so, and I had signed a contract to go to Sweden the next year. And I said, okay, if I get a real job, by the time I have to report I think in July I had to, then I'll retire. And I'd always kind of had my mind set on business. Actually, I went to Tech to get a marketing and business degree to work for my dad. He owned a lumber yard at the time. So yeah, I got a real job. And so that was the end. Started working as a pro rep for hockey and actually selling baseball bats. So that was the end of the line.
All right, we're going to get to that part, but I got to ask you this, okay? So you ended up playing 459 professional hockey games, which is a great career. Okay, did you ever see yourself with that type of long career as you were rising through the ranks? And tell us a little bit about your jersey closet. What does that look like? Yeah,
I didn't think I'd play one. So 450 is what you said, or
459? Yeah.
Yeah, those are all bonus games. All bonus games. So, like I said, I really very fortunate to get a scholarship, but truly the intent was to finish that degree and go home for work for Dad. And things happen along the way, and I got a couple of breaks. One of our coaches at Tech at the time, Newell Brown, had some connections to Hockey Canada. I got an opportunity to go play in the Spengler Cup as a college player. Made the All-Star team over there, and that's kind of sparked it. And I get St. Louis was there and watching me, so that's kind of what sparked it, right? And then I think I was the type of guy that I just had a great work ethic, and so I just needed an opportunity, and then I would work to kind of improve. And so this is what happened. Even going into pro, I got drafted along with a goalie named Paris Duffus, who was kind of a 1-year wonder at Cornell, and he signed with the Blues, and they expected him to be playing the NHL pretty quick. And I kind of won the starting job from him. And it just kind of goes on, right? Just keep working at it, and that's how you get to 450, I guess. But yeah, it's certainly a bonus of a career for sure. And then, yeah, jersey collection. The only one I don't have is probably my Blues. My Blues jersey is the one I probably am missing. But I got the Sharks and Huskies, and I got a couple of European ones, and a Peoria River one. I had a couple of All-Star ones. Those ones were always kind of neat looking jerseys. So yeah, there's not enough room to display them all. So I only have a couple up.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a break. Shout out our sponsors. We have Dooley's Pub. They've been Eau Claire's home for hockey and all sports fans since 2005. Dooley's Pub is a proud sponsor of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and local high schools. Dooley's is located on historic Water Street, providing excellent food and service. And also, Kelly Heating and Electric. Dedicated to serving their customers' heating and electrical needs efficiently, they have been named one of Bryant's Medal of Excellence winners. They provide expert advice from a friendly staff that can provide you with knowledge you need to make the best decisions on your next electrical, heating, or air conditioning product. Kelly Heating and Electric.
Geoff, one thing we didn't touch on is the style of your play. A lot of goaltenders nowadays are the butterfly. The goalies of yesteryear are stand-up. Where did you fall in the spectrum?
Yeah, I was mostly stand-up, I would say, but I would introduce, and just based on my size, but really, had a philosophy of I had to control the puck, so I needed to absorb all the rebounds. So I had a really good glove to control it. I still remember working with my goalie coach at Tech, Tiger Pierce, on how to deflect the angles and how to kind of let no rebounds in or not let no rebounds out. And then by doing that, allowed me to kind of stay up on top of my crease and kind of offset my size, right? Because if I stayed out on top of my crease and let a rebound, I was done. I just couldn't get back, right? So, much different than today. I always laugh when I kind of review some goalie equipment, and you can't even close the catcher. Like it's meant to be a blocker, and then they just happen to have some webbing that they hold the puck in, right? But it's so hard that you can't even close it, and so they've kind of lost that catching ability that I would say and rebound control that I was kind of always in tune with.
Michigan Tech, well, with the exception of the last game this season, over the last few years has certainly come back into light as a top contender. And their goaltender this year, Blake Petola, obviously Mike Richter finalist and CCH Goalie of the Year. As you look back at your career and compare yourself, your teams of yesteryear to now, what has changed between your game and the game now?
Yeah, I mean, the speed of the game is so fast. It's so fast. It's actually, in one way, it's impressive, but in another way, I find it sometimes a bit boring. And why I say that is because you used to be able to get a bit of momentum with the puck and have a little bit more excitement. Let the crowd kind of get into it while a guy's streaking down the wing and get ready to take a big slapper from the side. And I felt that there was a lot of momentum that happened kind of in that play. You still see it a little bit with a guy like McDavid in the NHL, but most of the game is played in kind of this, half a second possession. It's tick, tick, or ice the puck and get a stick on it so it's not icing, and then go chase it. And then it's the same kind of way. So there's a lot of I guess less possession I think is the biggest thing. Much faster, but way less possession. And so I find that's the biggest kind of change in the game since I played.
And Coach Sean also had a nice award, CCHA Coach of the Year. So we were up in the UP last summer and talked to him, and what a great guy, what a character. We noted his sense of humor was over the top.
Yeah, great. Yeah, my connection to Tech has kind of waned over the years a little bit. Obviously connecting back to Darcy or some of the other people. Like I certainly talked to a lot of my classmates that I had at the time, but my connection has kind of waned a little bit over the past few years. Maybe it was a little bit tighter when I had a bit more connection to some of the coaches. So Jamie Russell at the time I played with and Muddy Waters. But I kind of lost a little bit of touch with the program. But it was great to see them the last couple of years. They've actually put some good teams on the ice. And yeah, Petola is lights out. He's a real strong goalie.
So you had mentioned that you went to Tech to get your marketing degree, and you're going to come back and work with your dad in the lumberyard. So you were the outstanding student athlete of the year in 1992, but you didn't end up really working with your dad. Now you're working with the Canadian Tire. Okay, so you were recently written up in the Hockey News as one of the people of power and influence in the game as an associate vice president of Canadian Tire. You're also in charge of Sport Check and Pro Life Hockey. How did you end up working in this corporation?
Yeah, I spent a lot of years on the manufacturer side, so developing products for the most part. Worked for a company called iTech, if you remember the old clear visor, one of the first ones, and they had the patent on a jock short, that yellow jock short, if you remember. So that was a company that I kind of spent a lot of years with. We merged with Mission Hockey for a while, so I kind of developed sticks and skates, and then Bauer bought us, and I kind of went on to a few different companies. But it was funny at the time. This is probably 10 years ago. Canadian Tire was looking for some industry experts. They had kind of rotated some buyers within their four walls, and they had a buyer who didn't know much about hockey. They just knew how to buy. So they really want to change some of the piece. So I was the guy they kind of came after, and so it's a real prestigious job, the buyer of Canadian Tire in Canada. And so that's why I went in to be the buyer there. And I can still remember I was interviewed by the CFO at the time. And I met him for lunch up on the 18th floor, which is the top floor of our building, kind of overseeing the city of Toronto. And I asked them that day, I said, listen, like, chief financial officer cannot be interviewing all the buyers that come into this place. Like, there's anything happen. He says, no, you're the first. But he said, but our executives think they're all hockey experts, and I want to make sure that you can take the heat. So I guess I passed the test, and I got the job. So yeah. So that was my start. So I was a buyer for 5 or 6 years, and then we over the course of the time, Canadian Tire purchased Pro Hockey Life and Sport Check, and so we sold hockey across all these different stores, over 1,200 retail outlets between all the banners, and so we were kind of competing with ourselves on this. So I kind of came up with a strategy of how to differentiate, but kind of get all these banners winning business, but not really stepping on each other's toes. So that's kind of elevated me to the role I have now. And we own about 70% of the hockey business in Canada through all these kind of different banners. So we're a real strong player in that area. Yeah. I've since kind of branched out. I not only hockey, but I also look after our exercise program, our footwear and apparel, and then all team sports as well. So I got lots of buyers underneath me kind of leading the charge, but I'm overseeing that. But yeah, it's that marketing degree back at Tech has helped me.
Can imagine
that, and then some. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. You're talking about all these things that you've got going in your life. Are you still working out and staying in shape? And if so, are you still strapping on the skates once in a while?
So strapping on the skates, absolutely. Not the pads though.
Hey, you hear that a lot, that they put the pads away.
Yeah, like I love the game, and the locker room is one of the best. You guys know this too.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the most fun times you can see is kind of before and after the game. Hey, it's good to still play in the game to kind of keep in shape, but it's the before and after that's the best part. So yeah, I still play twice a week. In a couple of different leagues with a couple of friends I have that I've grown up with. So yeah, I still really enjoy playing. I still have a bit of competitive spirit, but at least I'm not getting worse every game, which I would be if I was playing net.
Fair enough.
So in your role with Canadian Tire, are you involved in any initiatives to expand the game to include a more diverse population of players? And I ask that because you look at a pair of skates now, upper tier skates, they're $1,000 American. You look at a stick, it's $300. Helmets, and and we're not even talking ice time yet. How are we making the game accessible to some of those, maybe I wouldn't say an underserved population, but populations that haven't really been involved too much in the game?
Yeah, you know what? It's a big issue. I think it's kind of a battle between when the sport is not growing registration wise. The manufacturers kind of think, well, how are we going to get growth as a business, right? And so what they do is they continue to raise prices and kind of put development in the high end players keep having to buy more and more expensive gear. But what it tends to make the game a bit elitist. And isolates it from people who want to play, and we all know how great a game it is. So I think we're doing a few things at Canadian Tire that I'm fairly happy with. We have a we have a charity called Jumpstart, and it's one of the biggest charities in Canada. We've helped, I think the number is over 3 million players or kids. It started as an opportunity for people who didn't have this money to afford the game. But it's now branched out into even inclusiveness. So we're building playgrounds that any kid of any ability can use. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can still get in the playground and use the facilities. And so this Jumpstart charity is doing a fantastic job, and it's helping Canada better than it is in the U.S. We find that the U.S. game is becoming a little bit more. I don't know if I want to call it elitist, but it's becoming a bit more expensive than it is in Canada. And I think Jumpstart is one of the reasons. We've also, I don't know if you've heard the news, but we just announced a few weeks ago, we are we are spending 50% of our sponsorship dollars with the female game. And so we think that there's a lot of opportunity in Canada for that. We think equality is very important to do it. So it's a big initiative we're doing there. And then the final one we're doing is the Hockey Diversity Alliance, led by Akeem Alou. We have just partnered with them as well, and so we're doing a bunch of different things. He is trying to get some, let's call it inner city or the BIPOC population into the game of hockey, and given the some of the things he found from the game. And so yeah, we're trying on a bunch of different levels here. It's not easy, and I would say, the demographics are changing in Canada based on immigration, and hockey is not a sport a lot of the people are know about. But at the same time, we know that when they come to Canada, one of the first things they want to do is skate. They feel more Canadian if they can get out and skate.
Right.
And so really, their stop for that is Canadian Tire. Like, we really service that learn to skate and learn to play customer. And so we do think there's a way to try and convert that person who's come to Canada and is foreign with the game, but wants to skate to become Canadian, to kind of convert them into be a hockey player, right? Because we know what kind of benefits there are once they can get in the game. So yeah, lots going on. I think there still needs more work. I get frustrated sometimes that we all, as hockey players, can't come together on some of these issues, and we all seem to be in it on our own. And so to combine our resources with retailers and manufacturers and some of even the sponsors like banks and of course Tim Hortons up in Canada is a big, they spend a lot on hockey advertising. But it would be great if we could all come together and kind of solve some of these problems, because yeah, hockey, as you guys know, is a fantastic game, and it's got a lot of lessons to teach. So it'd be nice if more people can experience it.
Boy, a lot of positive things that you've mentioned. And I've got one more question for you before we kind of close out here, and that is, what do you think the Leafs' chances are this year to bring home the cup? Yeah, as I said, I'm not a diehard, but there's eternal hope in the Leafs fans. But now it's that hope is going on over 50 years, right? But I do think that the Tampa Bay Lightning are an older and a tired team. It's a lot of hockey they played over the last few years, yes. Right? And so I think that first round feels good, but then they have this juggernaut called the Bruins, who are not supposed to be any good this year, who have just run away with the league. And I don't think the Leafs match up that well with them. I think the Bruins are tough. They're agile. They got some good goaltending in that tandem. So yeah, I'm a bit scared on the second round.
Well, we hope for the best for your sake. We'd like to see your Leafs do well.
Yeah, exactly.
Geoff, this has been an absolute pleasure. A lot of insight. The stories have been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. This is great, and continued success on this podcast, guys.
All right, a big thanks to our guest, Geoff Sarjeant, as well as your audience. Please remember our sponsors, Kelly Heating and Electric, Computer Recovery Associates, Dooley's Pub, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Follow us on your favorite social media platforms as well as YouTube. And remember, folks, until next time, stay on your inside edges.